As my good friend Monty Martin has famously said, fighters are the bacon of D&D. Because they go with everything, right? And for my money, the only thing better than putting a little bacon in something is to just have an entire meal full of bacon. And that is what we're going to do today. All fighter, all the time, no multiclassing, and my goodness, can they wreck stuff. And tank, and disrupt, and protect, and just make life miserable for their enemies and wonderful for their friends. Let's eat some bacon. You can make it vegan bacon, if you prefer. Welcome to D4. Hey everybody, so here at D4, every week I take a deep dive into character builds for my favorite role-playing games. I like to crunch numbers about them, I like to theorycraft about them, not so that I can tell you the definitive right way to play a character or how to build it, but to just explore one potential way to build something in the hopes of creating a character that's both fun but also powerful to play. So if you also enjoy creating characters for your favorite role-playing games, or if you just like theory crafting, or if you're looking for tips or ideas on how to build something that you're thinking about playing, then welcome home. This is where you belong, and I'm really glad you're here. So thanks for watching. My name's Colby. Okay, it's time for another single class build video. In case you're new here or you haven't been here for a while, I've been alternating every week for the last couple of months doing a series of videos where I pick one class and I make a build for them that doesn't multi-class and tries to be really good at what we think that class should typically be pretty good at, and sure, tries to otherwise maximize damage while they're at it. Today, the most vanilla class of them all, the fighter. I mean, are they really that vanilla though? I don't think so. They get lots of great toys to play with, especially in 5.5 with weapon masteries and a slew of buffs and new features they got, and especially if you pick the right subclass. So, which subclass should we be building around for our straight fighter? My first thought when I approached a single class fighter build was to go Eldritch Knight. I mean, obviously, right? Because spells. And spells would make this pure martial a gishy spell sword. When I did my new Bladesinger build a couple of weeks ago, right up there if you missed it, I talked about how I didn't necessarily love all of the Bladesinger changes in the update because I tended to like my spell swords to be a little more sword than spell. About 50% of the comments to that video and the short that I made out of that little blurb were, just play Eldritch Knight. But the response in my head to most of those would, why would I play an Eldritch Knight if the Bladesinger does almost everything better? I know, the Eldritch Knight exists. I don't want a 1/3 caster, I didn't ask for less spell, just more sword. Anyways, that response would have been super snarky and maybe obtuse and greedy. That's why I only thought it in my head, but now I've kind of said the quiet part out loud. Anyways, when it came time to write the script for the video today, I found I didn't really want to do an Eldritch Knight for a couple of reasons. One, because I've actually already done a single class Eldritch Knight build for 5.5 right up here about a year ago, and while I wasn't giving myself the rule at that time to only use the 5.5 Player's Handbook, I think the only thing I relied on for that build that was like older content, not in the new PHB, right, was the Booming Blade spell. Sub True Strike for Booming Blade in that build, and it would work almost as well. But the other reason that I didn't want to do an Eldritch Knight here, I mean, the video that started this whole series, right, the Marshals versus Casters video, right up there, if you missed it. It was a single class Barbarian build and a single class Sorcerer build. It was essentially trying to compare Marshals to Casters, right? And what I was trying to show, at least in part, was basically that at higher levels at least, Casters generally did better damage than Marshals, depending, among other things, on how many combat encounters you were having per day, right? And that, considering all of the other benefits that come from playing a full caster, that wasn't particularly balanced or great game design. I said in that video, I think, that I thought fighters were kind of the exception to the full marshals don't scale as well as they should rule, right? But is that true? Or maybe more accurately, is it true if they don't have spells? I don't know. Doing another Eldritch Knight for this exercise felt like it wasn't going to really clarify the thing that I was trying to clarify at all, or really show us if fighter damage scaling was fine or not, right? Because if you're using spells, even at the 1/3 caster level, then we're not really a pure martial, are we? So I've decided to go a different route today. And I'm kind of really looking forward to it because the build we end up with is honestly a lot more sustainable in the things that they can do. And I think they have almost as much diversity diversity and variety in the things that they can bring to the table outside of damage as they would be if they were a 1/3 caster. And they might just be like a better fighter than they would be as an Eldritch Knight too. Speaking of, what is a fighter supposed to be good at? What are we trying to build for and like prioritize here? I guess I'd say that you should be able to be pretty tanky, meaning that you're both hard to kill, but also that you can do things to disrupt enemies and make it more difficult for them to get to your squishier allies, while also doing solid, truly sustainable damage. Not just this one combat encounter per day garbage, but at least one combat per short rest or more. So those are the things we'll be prioritizing on the build today. Tanky Bruiser, disruptive damage dealer that's not easy to kill. Are you ready to jump in? I proudly present D&D build number 238, the quintessential fighter, the Mallet Master, the Mall Cop, the Master of Battles, the Ember Island Slayer, Hammer Time, the Cinder Crusher. Thanks as always to all the great recommendations from Discord. I think this week I'm going to go with the suggestion from Onslaught, pretty great pure fighter name itself right there, the Battle Masher. Huge thanks to my good friend Randall Hampton for the fantastic artwork that he put together for the build today. He does this every week. He's so talented. If you'd be interested in checking out the other stuff that he has done, or to even try and commission him to create some art for your character or even your entire party, I'll put links in the video description as always on how to do so. But first, okay, here are two things that I know about you. First, you love gaming because you're watching this channel. And second, you love things that are delicious because you're human. And so, as a result, I know that you are going to love a new sponsor I've got for the video today, Brass Dragon Bistro. All right, listen up. Brass Dragon Bistro is a woman-owned small business built on a love for all things D&D. And if that's the only thing you knew about them, I dare say it would be reason enough to support them. But they make adorable and delicious D&D themed candy. And I know you still have some stocking stuffers to buy, or a gift for your DM or other nerdy friends. Well, look no further. Let me show you guys some of these awesome treats. So they make caramels and gelatinous cubes, actually, and they are seriously delicious. The caramels come in awesome flavors like Halfling Hot Cocoa, Magnificent Mocha, that's my favorite actually, Elven Espresso, Champion's Chai, and the gelatinous cubes come in Goodberry, Blue Raspberry, Ginger, and this flavor is Fire Fruit. Check it out. They're so good. Great little gummies. Brass Dragon Bistro is like such a great sort of ethical company too. All of their packaging is biodegradable. The tea, coffee, and chocolate in their candy is 100% direct trade. And my favorite thing actually is you can use the candy in your game. Each bag of candy comes with rules for how to use them in game. So functional and delicious. Whoever kills the gelatinous cube gets to eat it. So yeah, there are so many reasons to love this company. So please go check them out at the URL that I've put in the video description in the pinned comment. Show these guys some love. And I mean, show your gaming table some love by bringing a bowl of awesome D&D themed treats to your next game night. They make great gifts, so maybe just treat yourself. All right, huge thanks to Brass Dragon Bistro. I seriously love what you guys are doing, and these things are seriously delicious. My kids are devouring them, as is my wife, as am I. All right, let's get back to the build. All right, at level 1, for our starting class, we're gonna start Fighter. Gosh, this guy, always starting Fighter. Suckers! I have to today, so no whinging. Speaking of whinging, for our species, we're gonna go Goliath and be a Fire Giant Goliath. I had a comment last time I used Fire Goliath complaining about how I used them on every build, and I was like, hey, in my last 10 builds, I've only used them like 3 times. And that was like a month and a half ago. I don't see this as being a must-do, but yeah, I do love Goliaths in 5.5. They're awesome. 35 feet of speed, the ability to grow large if you want, to make yourself like a bigger target on the battlefield, or to like sort of extend your reach almost, right? It's great if you want to grapple huge enemies. But then, yeah, you get a cool thing that you can do, proficiency bonus times per day, depending on which giant ancestry you take. I say fire because it lets us add a d10 of fire damage to an attack, which is the most damage that we can get out of this feature, but frost is great to do a little less damage but also slow, or hill to try and knock him prone, right? Or cloud for a bonus action teleport. That might be extra good on a non-spellcaster, right? But go ahead and pick what you want here for a species, really. Nothing's going to have a huge impact on our numbers. This is just the best, like, optimizing for damage pick for us, I think. As for our background, I'm going to say let's go old or custom if you can, right, to kind of make your own. But if you can't, I suppose I'd go farmer. I'd be a little annoyed about it though, because it doesn't give us the origin feat I most want, which is lucky, as it so often is. And so yeah, maybe for that reason, like if you can't do an old or custom background for your character, then I think human might be a better species choice. Then you could take tough, which is great anyways. I'd love to have that, an extra 2 hit points per level, right? And then lucky as well. And yeah, lucky's awesome. Advantage on any D20 test, proficiency bonus times per day is just wonderful. As for our starting abilities, I'm assuming that we go the point buy method as always and say let's take a 15 strength and a +2 there, a 15 constitution and a +1 there, and then a 14 dexterity and a 10 wisdom, or maybe 12 in each. It just depends on if you value your initiative and dexterity save more than your perception and wisdom save, really, right? For starting equipment, I'm going to say let's grab a chainmail and then a nice beefy two-handed weapon, right? A maul is my favorite. Great sword or great axe can work too. And I mean, yeah, we could go 2-weapon fighting here instead. As a fighter, it is a lot easier to swap out fighting styles and weapon mastery. So until we get our first feat, we would get a little more mileage out of dual wielding from a damage perspective. So feel free to go that route if you want. By level 4, I'd personally plan on committing to heavy weapons myself. More on that in a second. But yes, we do get weapon masteries at Fighter 1 here. And assuming that that's what you're doing as well, then yeah, I would plan on taking the maul so that we could topple, forcing enemies to make a constitution save when we hit them or be knocked prone, and there's no limit to how often we can use this, nor is there a size restriction on it. It's so good. Since, yeah, if they're prone, we'd have advantage on attacks against them as long as we stay within 5 feet, right? I'd probably consider taking the Great Axe for cleave as well in case you get 2 enemies standing next to each other so you can hit one and then get a free attack on their friend, right? Once per turn. It'd probably be worth considering grabbing a thrown weapon option here too, in case you need to make an attack from range, maybe the trident or the javelin or the hand axe, right? But then fighters also get a fighting style. And sure, if we really wanted to maximize our damage, we could grab the great weapon fighting style. It's not amazing, but especially if we're using a 2d6 weapon like the maul, it's okay. It turns 1s and 2s that we roll for weapon damage into 3s, which gives us an average damage increase of 1 per hit. So yeah, not amazing. And as a result, if you'd rather just take defense to increase your AC by 1 or interception to help keep your allies safe, you absolutely should. It might make you a little better at doing what a fighter is supposed to be doing, right? Finally, at level 1, we get Second Wind, which says that as a bonus action, twice per day and recovering 1 use on a short rest, we can heal ourselves for a D10 plus our fighter level. Hooray that we're going all fighter today, so the scaling on this is really nice. At level 2, we get that most infamous of fighter abilities, Action Surge, which lets us, once per short rest, take 2 actions on our turn instead of 1. So good. And then we get Tactical Mind, which is another neat way for us to use our Second Wind if we don't need it for healing. We can instead add a D10 to a failed ability check, hopefully turning it into a success. And if it still fails, well, we don't lose the use of Second Wind, which is really kind of Wizards of the Coast, I think. Speaking of people who are quite kind, let me give a shout out to my channel members and patrons. Thanksgiving is in a couple of days as I record this, and man, I am feeling thankful for you guys that support me in this way. It means so much to me, and you truly enable this channel to exist, so thank you. If you're not a member or a patron, I'd love it if you'd just consider joining. There's a button down there below the video, it says join, or if you look in the video description, you can find a link to the Patreon, and you can learn about, the different perks that I give to my members and patrons, including access to the library of write-ups that I do for all of my builds to help you recreate it a little more easily, a little cheat sheet, access to the community Discord server, and access to the live monthly Q&A hangout sessions that we do, which I'm doing later this week. I'm super excited. It's always like my favorite day of the month. If you aren't interested or don't think that you can afford to, support in this way, that's fine. Watching, liking, subscribing, just being here is a great way to support me too, so thanks. All right, at level 3, we get our fighter subclass, and what should we take? I've already said that Eldritch Knight is out for a couple of reasons. So which subclass from the 5.5 Player's Handbook would be better suited? Which makes the most quintessential fighter, who can also do really great sustained damage? Some of you might be thinking the champion, but the rest of you probably realized what I was going to do based on all of those titles. So yeah, it's gotta be the Battle Master, right? They just have such incredible versatility and all those awesome maneuvers. It just makes them feel like a true master of the battlefield, like every fighter should, I think. So let's get into it. First up, Battle Masters get Student of War, which gives us proficiency with an artisan's tool of our choice and an extra skill proficiency. Handy little ribbon there. But then of course there's the Combat Superiority feature, which gives us our superiority dice and our maneuvers. We get 4 superiority dice that reset on a short rest. They are D8s for now, and we can use them to help us do all sorts of cool things, most of them in combat. We get to pick 3 maneuvers for now, and there's a fantastic list. I want all of them. I think I would probably prioritize here Menacing Attack. First up, you spend a superiority die to add that die, a D8, right, in damage when we hit with an attack, and then forces the creature to make a wisdom save against our, strength-based DC, so lovely, or be frightened of us for a round, meaning they can't move closer to us and have disadvantage on their attacks and ability checks. It's a nice way to debuff enemies to help keep you and your ally safe. I think I'd also grab Trip Attack here. I know we've got Topple on our Maul, but, well, that's a Constitution save, and Trip Attack adds the D8 of damage and then forces them to make a Strength save or be knocked prone, and I just like having it as a backup in case the enemy makes their save against Topple, right? Especially if they've got a better Constitution save than a Strength save, which is fairly common, yeah? Being able to add both of these on an attack if we need to just really increases the likelihood that we're going to knock the enemy prone right on our first hit, and that is really important for us. Just remember that Trip Attack does have a size restriction. Unfortunately, it's larger, smaller, right? For the last option, I'm going to say let's grab Riposte here. I really love this maneuver. It says that when an enemy misses us with a melee attack, we can use our reaction to hit them back, adding the superiority die and damage as usual. Knowing we were going to get this, yeah, it makes me really want to have taken the defense fighting style at level 1, actually. In fact, I think I'm going to retcon things here and just ignore the great weapon fighting style when crunching numbers. It's just not that good. I'd way rather have a +1 to my defense than 1 extra damage on average when I hit. So yeah, grab defense. Or sure, interception, but that does require our reaction to use as well, right? Interceptions. So I'd say, yeah, just up your AC and thereby increase your offensive prowess via riposte while you're at it. Other maneuvers to consider here that I'd also love to have include Goading Attack to put a soft taunt on our target, right? You do extra damage and then force a wisdom save again, or the enemy has disadvantage on attacks against anyone but you until their next turn. It's a nice tank move, making you sort of like a more appealing target than your allies, but if we're giving a wisdom save for it, I think I'd just as soon take Menacing Attack to put that nastier, frightened debuff on them. Yeah, and then they have disadvantage on all their attacks. Precision Attack is great to add the superiority die to your hit chance if you miss, and I really love Commander's Strike to give up one of your own attacks so that your ally can use their reaction to make an attack. If you've got a rogue in your party who's able to get Sneak Attack on that reaction attack, this is especially good to have. At level 4, we get our first general feat, and yeah, of course, I'd want to take Great Weapon Master here, but it's not necessarily a no-brainer, so let's talk about it. The feat is fantastic. It bumps our strength to 18 and then says when we hit with a heavy weapon, as part of our attack action only now, right, we can add our proficiency bonus to the damage. It also says that if we crit with a heavy melee weapon or kill an enemy, we can use a bonus action to make another attack with that weapon. So why use this instead of 2-weapon fighting? If we were dual wielding with a Nick weapon, right, and took the dual wielder feat here at level 4 instead, we'd have a guaranteed 3 attacks at this level, 4 once we got extra attack next level. Isn't that better than 2 Maul attacks next level, right, and a chance at a bonus action 3rd attack? It all depends on our assumptions. The 2-weapon route is more reliable, no question. The heavy weapon route, though, will average just about the same amount of damage at these early levels if we assume that we're going to get a bonus action attack or a reaction attack on most rounds. I'm going to get into that more in a bit, but I do think that we'll have a very high likelihood of getting at least one or the other on our turn, sometimes both, right? And since at later levels, heavy weapons definitely outscale 2-weapon fighting in damage, at least when you're not a spellcaster who can easily add extra damage to all of their attacks via things like Spirit Shroud and Conjure Minor Elementals, then yeah, I'll say let's grab Great Weapon Master here. If you have a DM that's willing to let you like respec your feats, right, maybe with some downtime, then sure, go to weapon fighting and dual wielder here and respec maybe at level 9 or 11 to use heavy weapons. I'm not going to assume that we can do that, and I'm just going to commit to heavy weapons now and throughout the build. Okay. At level 5, we get extra attack, yes, so that we can attack twice with our attack action on our turn, very nice. And then we also get Tactical Shift now, which is yet another improvement to our Second Wind. This says that when we use a bonus action to activate Second Wind, that means when we use it to heal ourselves for now, right? We can also move up to half our speed without provoking opportunity attacks. This is a really great feature, honestly. I mean, even if we don't need the heal, it could let us close the gap with an enemy who we wouldn't otherwise be able to reach, to say nothing of being a great way to like get over to a squishier ally who needs some protection or like needs someone to beat up the bad guy that's trying to take him out, right? I really love it. It's kind of like a mini Rogue's Cunning action with a heal. So good. And then there's level 6, and fighters get that extra bonus feat at 6, and it's so awesome. Now, some of you may be thinking that I'm gonna go with Polearm Master, but to you I would say, you're still living in 2014. I think I would actually instead grab Sentinel here. Man, I love this feat on a tanky disruptive damage dealer especially. It's so good. It's a half feat, so it would put our strength at 19, but then says that if we hit a creature with an opportunity attack, their speed is 0 for the rest of the turn. It's a nice way to keep an enemy in place and, you know, keep them from getting to your squishier allies or fleeing the battle, right? But better yet, it says that we can make an opportunity attack against an enemy even if they take the disengage action or when they hit a target other than us with an attack. And especially on a build with riposte, this is just some wonderful synergy. Now, if your target swings at you and misses, or swings at an ally and hits, you get to make an opportunity attack against them. How often will that happen? Obviously, it's impossible to say, but it seems to me pretty dang likely most of the time that you're going to be in range of an enemy and they're going to either attack you and hopefully miss, or attack an ally and hopefully hit. Sorry, ally. I really want them to hit you. Now, sure, sometimes they'll swing at an ally and miss, or swing at you and hit, or do neither of those things. They're going to try and cast a spell, or use some other not technically an attack feature, right? But I'm willing to bet that at least half of the time, if not more, one of those two things are going to happen, or they'll just try and run away from us, right? And we'd get an opportunity attack anyways. Is that overestimating? I don't think so. I don't know. Let's actually discuss more in the damage report, since it's time for our first one, now that we're level 6. Okay, here's what combat will hopefully look like for us at this level. It's pretty straightforward. We are a pure non-Eldritch Knight fighter, after all. On round 1, we'd run up to our chosen enemy and make a couple of attacks against them. Let's use a luck point to get advantage on that first attack. If we do hit, we'd add a d10 of fire damage as a fire Goliath and try to topple them with our maul. And if they succeed on their save against topple, we could add a trip attack superiority die to really try and ensure that they're prone. I'm going to assume that we're adding a d8 once per round from one of our maneuvers, whether trip, menacing, or riposte. Let's assume that we're blowing Action Surge on round 1 as well to get a couple more attacks in, and yes, I will assume that the enemy's prone and thus we would have advantage. I know it's not a guarantee, but the likelihood is pretty high. On rounds 2 and 3, we do the same thing, sans Action Surge, right? And then on round 4, we do the same thing, but we're out of luck points and Fire Giant Goliath burns, right? Our proficiency bonus is only 3. And yeah, doing all this is very resource intensive, but so are most of my builds, and the good news is that since we're a fighter, our damage would still be pretty great on other combat encounters we had that day, especially if we could get a short rest, right? Now, the question is, how often would we proc a bonus action attack from Great Weapon Master by killing or critting, and how often would we proc a reaction attack, whether via the usual opportunity attack, or riposte, or sentinel? Yet another thing that's impossible to say for certain, but I think I'm just going to say that we're going to get one more attack per round on average. Sometimes we'll get a bonus action attack. Sometimes we'll get a reaction attack. Sometimes we'll get neither, but sometimes we'll get both. With all of the things that we've done to help ensure at least one or the other, I think it's a fairly decent assumption. But tell you what, I won't assume that we've got advantage on that third attack that we make, whether with our reaction or our bonus action. If we're making it with our reaction, it's unlikely that the enemy is toppled, right? They would have stood up. and we don't have that many luck points. And if it's on our bonus action, well, it's a good chance that we killed somebody and now we're going to attack a new target. So we're not going to have advantage on them either because they won't be prone. These things should help curb the numbers a little bit. Feel free to lower your expectations of these numbers if you think I'm still assuming too much. But under all of these assumptions averaged over a 4-round combat encounter against enemies with a 10 armor class, we would average 57 damage per round. And against a 15 AC, it would be 50 DPR. Dang, Master of Battles. I mean, compared to other sustained damage builds that I've done to date, that beats all of them. At least until you get into very high enemy ACs. And no surprise then that it's beating out all of the single class builds that I've done for the series so far, at least for damage to a single enemy, ignoring the fact that the Eye of the Hurricane Druid right up there and the Hammer of the Divine Cleric right up there were outpacing them for total damage, of course, since they were targeting 3 enemies. So, okay, so far, not all that surprising, I suppose. We came into this assuming that fighters would lead the way for pure martials, and here we are. They're kind of neck and neck with that barbarian build that we did at the beginning of this thing. And of course, I mean, if you're not getting a third attack in a round via your reaction or bonus action, or enemies are getting lucky and making all of their saves against your prone attempts, right, then these numbers will be a little bit lower. So it's probably safe to say that they're fairly on par with that barbarian build right now. And I mean, that's a fantastic place to be. So far, everything is working as intended balance-wise. Let's see if that continues. At level 7, as a battle master, we get the Know Your Enemy feature, which is a pretty potent feature, truly. It says that as a bonus action now, we can just know the resistances, vulnerabilities, or immunities of any creature we can see within 30 feet. Dang, that's some really impressive Sherlock Holmes-like intuition and deduction, methinks. You can only do this once per day for free, but spending a superiority die would let us do it again. It'll be really awesome when we get some useful info out of it. Don't forget, we also at this level get 1 more superiority die to use per short rest, and we get to learn 2 more maneuvers. Nice. As for which ones to take, I'd probably grab 2 of those that I mentioned last time, right? Commander Strike, Goading Attack, or Precision Attack. But feel free to grab something else if you'd really like. At level 8, we get another feat. So many delicious feats. And I think I'd go Mage Slayer here, honestly. It would cap our strength at 20. And then it tells us that when we damage someone who's concentrating on a spell, they have disadvantage on their concentration check. Better yet, it says that once per short rest, when we fail an intelligence, charisma, or wisdom saving throw, we can just succeed instead. Legendary resistance. That's kind of incredible when you need it. Now, what about Polearm Master? All right, let's get into it. Under the 2014 5e rules, combining the Great Weapon Master and the Polearm Master feats was one of the best ways to ensure really great damage as a melee character, since the extra damage you could potentially do from Great Weapon Master would apply even to that bonus action attack that the Polearm Master feat gives you, right? Like, lets you hit with the butt of your weapon. But in 5.5, in 2024, it's a lot less of a no-brainer combo. Great Weapon Master continues to be great. I'd argue even better than ever. But it's important to remember that the bonus damage that it gives with heavy weapons now only applies to the attacks that we make with the attack action, not the bonus action, not with our reaction. When you combine that with the fact that a non-polearm, like a maul, does a little more damage per hit, right? 2d6 instead of 1d10, and that you might get a bonus action attack with that maul anyways if you have the Great Weapon Master feat, right? If you crit or you kill an enemy, then suddenly Polearm Master is a bit more of a side grade rather than a straight upgrade. Add to that the fact that we might want our bonus action for something else once in a while, in the case of this single class fighter that we're building today for our second wind, among other things, and the extra damage a maul would do if we get a reaction attack, which we're trying to help ensure, and perhaps above all that we could get something else really useful and powerful with that feat if we didn't take Polearm Master, right? There's lots of great feats out there. And suddenly, taking Polearm Master isn't just not a no-brainer, but it feels to me like it might be a bad idea. Now, that's not to say that there aren't reasons to consider it. Being able to attack from reach with a polearm among them, as well as one more way to help us get an attack with our reaction, right? I think it's worth considering, for sure. but there are pros and cons to weigh now, and frankly, I think that's a good thing. When something is so clearly superior than all other options, kind of makes it feel like you don't have much of a choice, does it? PAM is a good idea if we assume that it significantly increases our chance to get a reaction attack and that our chance to get a bonus action attack without it is worse than I assume. Or if you have a really amazing magic polearm. Or if you really want to attack from 10 feet away. But remember, it doesn't quite synergize with Sentinel as well as it used to, right? Sentinel stops them cold if we hit them with an opportunity attack specifically, and the reaction attack we get to make with Polearm Master when an enemy enters our reach is specifically no longer considered an opportunity attack, but just an attack made with our reaction, meaning they could still move. Don't get mad at me. I don't make the rules, I just understand them. What's more, if we're relying on knocking enemies prone to get advantage, well, we only have advantage if we're within 5 feet of them, so we would have to move up to within 5 feet if we were using a polearm after we knock them prone anyways. So that reach is a little less cool on this build especially. Or, of course, above all, if you just think it would be cool to use a polearm on your character and that fits your character concept best, then you should do it. But I really don't think it would be much of a damage increase overall. A very minor one at most, again, depending on our assumptions. So I'm going to forego the feat. This time on this build, I'm sure I will use it in other builds in the future as I have in the past. Hooray for a little more variety now. Okay, let's move on. At level 9, we get Indomitable, which is just incredible now as it lets us once per day re-roll a failed save, but this time adding our fighter level to the new roll, almost ensuring a success, right? A +9. Between this and Mage Slayer, with proficiency in Constitution and Strength saves, our saving throws are looking really fantastic at the moment. Treant Monk would be so proud. Oh, and a word of advice. Probably don't use this feature on a dexterity saving throw, or in general, a saving throw where you're still going to take half damage anyways, even if you succeed, right? Unless it's huge damage, or like it would be the difference between life and death, yeah. You're probably better off saving Indomitable for something that's going to just shut you down, or like stun, or a mind control effect, or something like that. Of course, you're not always going to know the result of something that you're saving against. Sometimes the DM just calls for a saving throw, right? And you don't know why. But if you think it's probably a save for half damage scenario, generally speaking, you're probably better off holding on to Indomitable. Just a little public service announcement. We're not done yet though at level 9. We get Tactical Master now too, and this is truly one of my favorite things that fighters got in 5.5. It just says that when you attack with a weapon that you've mastered, right, then when you hit with it, instead of using the usual mastery, you can instead push, sap, or slow them. And that's just kind of fantastic. It means that you could topple with your maul on the first hit, but then on the next, well, they're already prone, so why not do something else? You could push them or slow them by 10 feet. I mean, coupled with losing half their move speed to stand up from prone on their turn, that is a serious snare you've put on them. They'll probably only have 5 or 10 feet of move speed. Or sure, sap them, right? So that their next attack has disadvantage. It's just awesome. And yeah, I mean, if you've got a really powerful great axe, but you don't have 2 enemies standing next to each other, well, at least you can still use your great axe and get a cool mastery from it. Versatility for the win. All right, at level 9, it is time for our next damage report. Since last check, we have capped our strength at 20 and picked up some incredible versatility, defense, and utility, but we haven't actually done that much for our damage. I mean, I guess that proficiency bonus bump will help a little bit, both for luck points and for Fire Goliath mini smites and our hit chance, right? And sure, we've got one more superiority die per short rest if we wanted to continue blowing them all in one glorious combat encounter, I guess. And so, yeah, sure, I'll assume that we're using 2 superiority die now on round 1, which is like our Nova round, right? But yeah, altogether, the damage increases are fairly minor. So, averaged over 4 rounds here, against enemies with a 10 AC, we would now do 66 damage per round. And against a 16 AC, it would be 59 DPR. So yeah, only about a 10% increase or so. But considering how hard we were hitting at 6, that still keeps us, when compared with other DPR builds to date at this level, in tier 1, but maybe like middle of tier 1 now instead of beating everybody. Yeah, those caster gishes and pyromaniacs are starting to pull away from us now, alas. But hey, We've got great sustainability, burst, survivability, and even utility, plus some nice scaling on the near horizon, so let's keep it going here. At level 10, as a battle master, our feature is a little bit boring, but pretty nice. Our superiority die goes up to a D10, and we get 2 more maneuvers. I'm going to say pick your favorites here, PYF, but I'd probably grab whatever honorable mention one we hadn't grabbed yet, and then rally, I think, for some temporary hit points. Parry could be worth a look, but it requires our reaction. I don't love that. Pushing attack is nice, but we can already push thanks to Tactical Master. Anyways, let me know if you think that there's an obvious one that we haven't mentioned yet. At level 11, though, we get the almighty, unique among all classes, Pact of the Blade Lock says what? Extra attack. 3 attacks now with our action, which yes, would get to add our Great Weapon Master bonus damage, and it's at this point really that heavy weapons kind of clearly pull ahead, I think, compared to 2-weapon fighting, right? And never really looks back. Especially since Action Surge now would give us 6 attacks on our turn, all of which would get to add that Great Weapon Master bonus damage. It was just a lot of extra damage. At level 12, we get another feat. And you know, I think I'd probably take Heavy Armor Master here, if I'm being honest. This might not be a terrible time to take Polearm Master, as long as you don't have like an amazing maul that you're, really committed to. But yeah, I kind of feel like that ship's maybe sailed. So let's increase our survivability, right? There are plenty of other decent options. I mean, Charger would potentially give us a teeny damage bump, but not a huge one, among other things. And there's stuff like Resilient Wisdom or Dexterity for better saving throws, or just straight up bumping our Constitution. But I just really appreciate the buff that Heavy Armor Master got in 5.5. It now would increase our Constitution for us by 1. It can do Strength too, right? And then reduces any bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage by our proficiency bonus every time we take it, which is going to be 5 soon, and that can really add up, considering the fact that almost all enemies do at least some bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage to us when they hit, right? It's a solid way to stretch our survivability, and, the con half feat is a nice little bonus as well. At level 13, we get Indomitable ×2, so that we can use it twice per long rest now for even more saving throw happiness. And then we also get Studied Attacks, which says that if we miss with an attack roll against an enemy, our next attack against them just has advantage. Sweet. Granted, that might not do much for us if they're already prone anyways, but they might not be. So this is a nice little present that I'm more than happy to receive. Okay, at level 13, it is time for our next damage report. Since last check, we've seen another proficiency bonus increase, a bump to our superiority die up to a D10, right? And above all, yes, that 3rd attack. And as always, some nice little survivability and utility increases to boot. But at this level here, averaged over 4 rounds against enemies with a 10 armor class, we would do 94 damage per round, and against a 17 AC, it would be 87 DPR. And yeah, I mean, no surprise that we're seeing about a 50% increase over last check. Making more attacks leads to significantly more damage. Who would have thought? And look at that, scaling on a pure martial character into tier 3. Amazing. But compared to other single target, single class builds, not too surprisingly, we've slipped behind that sorcerer, like the caster build that I did for that Martial vs. Casters video a couple months ago. And we continue to fall down the ranks compared to all other DPR builds to date, the best of whom all have spells at their disposal, except, very notably, that BFG Barbarian build from several months ago. That's what the thumbnail looks like. Yeah, that BFG, the blade flinging giant, is doing Marshall's proud. But yeah, so we're kind of more at the bottom of tier 2 now by comparison. But hey, we're still in tier 1, people. Fighters are awesome. Let's see if we can keep it up down the home stretch. At level 14, we get yet another extra feat. So awesome. And I think that assuming we went Heavy Armor Master last time, we take another half con feat here to get that Constitution up to 18. And for me, that probably means Crusher, I think, to push our enemy 5 feet when we hit them, any direction, plus cause attacks against them to have advantage if we crit, right? Or Speedy wouldn't be bad. It would give us 10 feet of extra speed, and also says that when we dash over difficult terrain, we're not slowed, and also that opportunity attacks have disadvantage against us. Some nice little movement buffs there. I probably prefer Crusher. You don't always need to push somebody every turn, and we do have Tactical Master, but you know, it'll be a nice, just kind of easy automatic push when there's good reason to be pushing them. And there almost always is, right? Especially since I've used this tactic on builds in the past, but the Crusher feat still doesn't specify like where you push them. It's just to any unoccupied space within 5 feet. So if your DM allows it, and I think it works rules as written, you could knock them up into the air, right? And then with a little help from Tactical Master, push them another 10 feet. That might get them 15 feet in the air. And then they're falling prone, taking an extra d6 of damage, and they don't get to save against that. So could be another way to get a little extra damage and help guarantee a prone enemy, yeah? I'm not going to add that to the numbers when I crunch them. It is a little gimmicky. I'm not sure if all tables would allow it, though I think most would. That might be one to do a poll on. Anyways, it might be an extra d6 of damage when you hit an enemy. At level 15, as a Battle Master, we get the Relentless feature, which is really, really good. And I don't think in all of my years of using fighters in character builds that I've ever taken a Battle Master to level 15, have I? Let me check. This is easy because I have a table of contents in the video description of every video, and you can search it by class and subclass. Yeah, I never have. I did one Battle Master build to 14 once. It was the Overreactor character thumbnail right there, many moons ago. That was a fun one. But yeah, never have taken one to 15. Granted, the old version of this feature is way worse, so that would help explain why I never did go to 15, but in the 5.5 version of Relentless is stellar. It says that once per turn, when you use a maneuver, you can just use a d8 for it without spending a superiority die. Free maneuver once per turn. So freaking awesome. And there's nothing prohibiting us from also using a superiority die for another maneuver on that same turn. Or 2, or 6, since we have 6 of them now at this level. That is some scaling, people. It's not amazing, but it's an extra d8 per turn. It's something. And of course, we get more than just damage out of those maneuvers, right? So hey, it's pretty great. Speaking of, we also do get to learn 2 more maneuvers, so that we've got 9 total here. And yeah, that's just a ton. I'm gonna say, go ahead and PYF. At level 16, we get yet another feat. So many feats. Oh, how I long for this many feats on all of my builds. I'm gonna here suggest that you just take any of the ones that I've talked about thus far, or even just bump your constitution. At level 17, though, finally for us, fighters get another use of Action Surge, meaning we'd have 2 incredible rounds of burst available to us per short rest. Again, nice scaling, and we even get another use of Indomitable, so that we can continue to shrug off saving throws 3 times per day. And I mean, at Fighter 17, we're adding a 17 to that failed save. Very, very, very rarely will we fail a save. This is practically legendary resistance. All right, it is time for our final damage report. Since last check, we've gotten 1 free maneuver per turn, at a d8, right? Another glorious round of burst damage thanks to a second Action Surge, a bump to our proficiency bonus, and then just additional utility and defensive capability, which is lovely. But averaged over a 4-round combat encounter now, against enemies with a 10 AC, we would do 119 damage per round, and against an 18 armor class, it would be 109 DPR. And hey, we broke the century mark, right on. Compared to other sustained DPR builds to date at this level, we're kind of in the same place, bottom of tier 1, and beating out all other single target, single class builds except that Sorcerer Caster build. So, what does it all mean? I don't know, but let's see if we can extrapolate some potential meaning in the final thoughts. First up, the tier score for this build, if you take the damage they do against every armor class we calculate for at each of the 4 damage reports and just average it into one big number, we end up with a 71, which puts us right at the bottom of tier 1, currently. Only the second non-caster to make it there thus far. And then, yeah, this puts us above all other single target damage dealers except the Sorcerer build who was spamming Scorching Ray, right? But they're very close. But we were beating them pretty handily through, like, beyond tier 2 of play, where most of us spend most of our time playing, right? And yeah, the tier score for that build was only a 72 or 73, so super close. Anyways, let's actually take a closer look at those numbers, shall we? When I first started this project, I hypothesized that the fighter was the best scaling pure martial in the game. This seems to have proven that out so far. But maybe surprisingly, for me at least, they're not as far ahead of the barbarian build as I thought they'd be. And that actually makes me pretty happy. It makes me feel like, again, Wizards of the Coast got closer to parity, at least between martials, for damage anyways, than I maybe gave them credit for. At least if we're just talking the barbarian and the fighter. Monk and rogue might feel a little differently, at later levels especially. But you could argue that monks and rogues bring things that barbarians and fighters don't bring. I'm not sure if I'd believe you, but you could make the argument. But yeah, hey, go barbarians, right? Not getting that third attack, but still only coming in slightly behind the fighter in average damage here, while potentially enjoying a little more survivability, maybe. If that's true, it feels like a pretty nice balance. On the other hand, I might be just a tad dismayed that the fighter isn't doing more damage, since it means they're further behind the casters than I might have guessed for damage at higher levels. Now, happily, in my opinion, they still maintain a damage edge over that sorcerer build, like I've said, up through level 10 or 12 or so. And of course, all of the things I said back in that Martial versus Casters video still apply here too, right? I feel like I'm beating a dead horse a little bit here, but I'm just gonna keep saying it. The more combat encounters you have between long rests, and the better the magic weapons are that you give your martials, the better the martial damage looks by comparison. And no, it's not all about the damage, I know. But whenever I hear someone make that argument, at least when applied to this conversation, I kind of just want to go, you're right. It's not all about damage. But my point is, if casters are pretty clearly superior to martial characters in control, support, and arguably utility, not to mention area of effect blasting, then I kind of think you gotta give these non-caster characters more sustained single target damage than you're giving them. Otherwise, what else do they have? Survivability? Maybe. But maybe not, especially if you can multi-class, or grab the shield spell, etc., right? And this actually reminds me of a comment that I recently received on one of my videos. In older versions of D&D, I think the assumption used to be that fighter types were generally a little stronger in the early game, and caster types were generally a little stronger once you got into the higher levels. Speaking as someone who used to play a D&D, I think that's generally true. The challenge with playing a magic user back in the day was just straight up getting your character to even survive until higher levels, right? Where you kind of very clearly became a more powerful character compared to non-spellcasters. Maybe it's the nostalgia speaking, but I don't necessarily hate that game design. I'm not sure that I love it either, frankly. It's not a hill that I'm going to die on by any means, but I can appreciate the philosophy behind the design. But these days, the way that most of us are playing D&D, at our tables anyways, I don't think that that's true anymore. But maybe if we don't allow multiclassing, not something that I'm arguing for, just saying, or, better yet, in my opinion, we make sure to have plenty of combat encounters between long rests, or make sure to give those marshals really good magic weapons, or maybe both of those last two things, if I had my druthers, then yeah, the balance might be closer than I used to think. And that makes me happy. And this build makes me happy. Man, solid survivability, really good sustained damage and burst damage. I mean, we were clearing 100 damage back by like level 11 when using Action Surge, on average, right? And we could have cleared it before that if we were willing to sort of like dump more resources into one glorious round of combat. We've got fun utility, even a little bit of tanky support potential, and just really solid tools to disrupt the battlefield and make life miserable for our enemies. I think it'd be fairly easy to play, so new player friendly for sure, and just a well-rounded powerhouse of a character that would truly just master their battlefield. So that's the build for the week. I hope you enjoyed it. I love you guys. Thank you so much for all that you do for me, for the channel. It means so much to me. It really does. I hope you have a fantastic day and a great week. And if you don't, hang in there, okay? Please don't give up. You can do this. I hope that you will do good and be kind, and that I see you again very, very soon. But until then, take care. Bacon pancakes, making bacon pancakes. Take some bacon and I put it in a pancake. Bacon pancakes, that's what I'm gonna make. Bacon pancakes. I can't, ever since I wrote the bacon intro, I can't get that song out of my head, and it's the only thing that I want to sing. I am not, like a Adventure Time fan. I don't think I've ever watched a full episode. But I've seen lots of clips, and every clip I watch, I'm like, I would probably like this show, right? I didn't want Knox to watch it when he was little because I thought it was like too violent. I'm talking like little. It just felt a little like it was just going to give him ADD. But my Gen X is showing. So what do you think? Should I start watching Adventure Time? Knox, don't answer. I already know what you think. Okay, hold on. Knox is making rolls today for Friendsgiving, and he's being loud. Okay, it's time for another straight class build video. I'm going to say that differently. Thanks as always to all the great. So which and their and adding the superiority, so that we can attack twice on our turn. Very nice. Bacon pancakes, that's what I'm gonna make. Bacon pancakes.